Yeah. I know. I look ridiculous, but NFL drafts in the city this year, so decided to get into the spirit of things for the weekend. From the Vault 309 recording room, this is the Twee'quel podcast. What's up, Eric? Okay, hold on. Let me change real quick. Now, see? A little bit more presentable. What's up, everybody? I'm Jake Alexander, the voice in the void, the lone wolf, your favorite host with a lisp. Welcome to another episode of the Twee'quel podcast. If this is your first time listening, hey, go listen to any of the older episodes on Spotify or watch all the videos right here on YouTube. And if you've been rocking with us for a while, you know how I always am. Thank you very much, because you could be doing anything, but you decided to hang out with me in this pokey little podcast. We got a great show today. We got a lot of stuff to get through. We got X-Men 97. We're going to talk about the movie Civil War. We're going to talk about that travesty, Good Times over on Netflix, and we're actually going to throw in the Society of Magical Negroes to go along with Good Times, because trust me, I got words for both of them. It's just a lot of stuff we got to get to. I'm so happy you decided to be here. Happy Saturday to you, because this is not a regular day for our episode. It's usually on Friday, but we had the special episode on Friday, so we have our regular episode today, and it's going to be the same thing next week. So make sure you subscribe right here on YouTube and over there on Spotify, so you can catch both when they do drop. But we got a lot of stuff to get to, so let's jump right into it with the news. So we're going to open up our news today talking about the passing of Ray Chan. Now, you don't know the name, but I guarantee you're going to know his work. He's a longtime art director for so many of the MCU films such as Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame. And he's actually done the art direction for the upcoming Deadpool Wolverine film. Ryan Reynolds wrote of Ray Chan on Twitter, he was, quote, as valuable a creative force on the Deadpool and Wolverine film as any writer, artist, or director, or any of the stars for that matter. He built worlds from scratch, and he did so in the most collaborative and inclusive ways. Ray was peerless. Writer and director Sean Levy added also that Ray did more than design worlds for our film. He lit up the world around him. Ray Chan was only 56. Box office, the top spot was taken by Civil War for the second week in a row, bringing it to $64.5 million worldwide. Pretty good for an independent studio / independent film. Godzilla Kong actually remained in the top three, coming in at number 3. It is now at $489.5 million. That's a big number for a film. That is way above its estimate. And a new film took the number 2 spot, Abigail, landed in the number 2 spot with $18.3 million. Again, it's an independent film, so that's actually pretty good for its opening weekend. I'm pretty sure it'll go higher as word gets out about how good that film actually is. With all these numbers, and pretty much every film thus far, except for maybe 2 this year, has blown past its estimates. 2024 may actually turn out to be one of the better years, if not the best year, ever since the COVID lockdowns at the box office. So that's a good sign for the industry, and let's see how it goes. Robert Downey Jr. returns. Well, maybe. The Russo brothers don't seem to think so. So fresh off his win at the Oscars for Best Supporting Actor in Oppenheimer, Robert Downey Jr. is quoted as saying that Iron Man is, quote, in his DNA, and he would love to return to the role, and he relishes the chance to do so if he ever got a chance. With the Russo brothers, who directed a couple of the MCU films, they don't believe that that's possible. They said to themselves that, hey, Iron Man is dead. Tony Stark is dead. And we've closed the book, quote unquote, in that particular character. So they don't see how it can happen. Well, for the Russo brothers, I got 2 words for you: Secret Wars. I mean, let's be for real. If you're going to bring any character back, anybody that's dead, anybody that's gone, Secret Wars is going to be the time to do it. It's all the multiverse crossing over. You got all these different versions of the same characters we've seen over and over. Hey, if you're going to bring somebody back, that is the perfect time to do it. That's pretty much what the film is going to be for. So, hey, if RDJ wants to come back, I'm all for it. But let's be for real. It was him that walked away in the first place and said he didn't want to do it anymore. So, if he has any compunction about coming back, he's going to have to go to Kevin Feige and say, hey, you know what? I was wrong. I need to come back to the MCU. Speaking of returns, can we imagine a time when Wesley Snipes could come back as Blade? Because according to a couple of reports from many different sites, it is a possibility that we may actually see Wesley Snipes show up in the MCU as Blade, but it's not exactly what you think. Just like Robert Downey Jr. coming back as another version of Iron Man in Secret Wars, that would be the time, according to many reports, that we could see Wesley Snipes come back as a variant of Blade, but Mahershala Ali would still remain as the main Blade going forward after that film. And I'm all for it. Hey, I have no problem with it. Every Blade is such a beloved franchise, even though the third movie did not do as well as everybody wanted it to. If he comes back, that's fine. Going forward, I say let Mahershala Ali get his shine. That's all well and good. So, but you tell me down in the comments, do you want Wesley Snipes to come back and be Blade from then on, or do you want Mahershala Ali, like me, to get his shine and to carry the franchise off into the future? Either way, I'm all good. But they better do Blade right, because if they don't, the backlash is going to be heavy. And if you're not reading Blade right now in the comics, you really need to. His new power set, amazing. Couple of delayed films going forward this year and actually into next year. So Kraven the Hunter has been pushed back again, and so has the new Karate Kid film. Now, Karate Kid actually has a good reason for being pushed back. So we know that the last season for Cobra Kai is coming, and it's being pushed back in order to follow right after the end of Cobra Kai, because the new Karate Kid film will be a crossover between Ralph Macchio and Jackie Chan's two different universes. So they're going to mold those together into one seamless Karate Kid timeline. Its original date was December 13th, but now it's being moved to May 30th of next year, 2025. Kraven the Hunter is actually going to occupy that December 13th spot, being moved back from its August 30th spot of this year. So it's still coming out this year, but it's not coming out until the holiday season in December. Kraven had better watch out, because it is not a lot of goodwill going on for anything that has to do with the films or anything in the Spider-Verse right now coming out of Sony. So they had better tiptoe into this and make sure that they do it right. I've read up on a little bit more of Kraven, so closer to the date of the film coming out, we'll actually talk about everything that should be going on in the film, because this is supposed to be his origin story. So we'll dive into that as soon as we get close to the date of the film. Let's end the news today by talking about the Crunchyroll and Funimation merger. So it was sometime in the fall. Don't forget, Funimation bought Crunchyroll for $1.175 billion. That's billion with a B. Has a lot of money for a bunch of anime. But even though they paid for all of it, they're actually not going to get all the titles on their site to stream. So because of licensing agreements, certain things cannot stay on the site for the new merger. So you're going to wind up losing IP such as Fooly Cooly, Astro Boy, Mobile Suit Gundam Seed, and 4 different Dot Hack series. They'll be there to stream, but you can't buy them and keep them unto yourself. So, but there are going to be other things like Erica 7, Ghost in the Shell 2, Innocence, and the first 2 seasons of Tenchi Muyo, where you won't be able to stream them and you won't be able to download them. You just won't get them at all. The list I have is extensive. There's almost 200 IP that you will not be able to see anymore on this new merged site from these two companies because of licensing agreements. This is why I have been telling people for the longest, you have to get physical media. It is an absolute must. Things like this, and like your power going out, or just the sites deciding, hey, we're just going to shut down, or we're just going to shift this off so we can bring in more things. You lose stuff that way, and there are things that you will never be able to see again. It really sucks, but hey. And also, this merger was supposed to help curtail piracy, but I got a feeling this is just going to push more people to pirate a hell of a lot more going forward. That's all the news for now. Don't forget to check the Instagram page at @the_Twee'quel_pod. And make sure that you are following right here on YouTube, so you can know when I drop a new video for anything, not just for the podcast. I drop videos for other things going on as well. Up next, we're going to talk about 2 things that I do not recommend you watching in 2024. So I am going to make this short. I'm going to make this as plain as I can possibly put it. Netflix has released an animated series for an updated version of Good Times. And when I say updated, I just mean it was made in 2024, because to watch it, there is nothing updated about the scope, the tone, the jokes, the caricatures, the absolute trash of a show that it actually is. Now, add on the fact that this follows the American Society of Magical Negroes, and then what we have is a gigantic problem that I was going to stay silent about, but I don't think I can. I understand what satire is. I understand what parody is. I grew up through the 80s and 90s watching movies like Blazing Saddles and Spaceballs, and I absolutely love those movies. So I understand the entire scope of how you do a parody and how you do satire. The American Society of Magical Negroes and this updated version of Good Times is not satire. What it is the same tired trash tropes that we've seen thrown about black people for far too long. It is 2024. There was no reason for either one of these properties to be made. And for some odd reason, it was greenlit. Now, I can be mad at the people who made it, but what the big point of finger that I would like to throw out is the people who are in these properties. Like with the American Society of Magical Negroes, I just knew right off the bat it was going to be bad, and I didn't want to see it, but I went and saw it anyway, specifically because David Allen Greer is in it. He's Detroit, just like I am. I've watched him ever since Hollywood Shuffle and the Wayne Show and all of that, right? In Living Color, I've been a gigantic fan of his for the absolute longest time, and the fact that he was in it and I have not seen him in anything, I said, okay, just for his sake, because I am such a fan, I will give this a shot. I will go see it. It was a waste of $10, quite honestly. Now, Good Times. Just watching the reviews, I knew it was going to be bad. But I watched it anyway for one simple reason. I've always said that I cannot give you an honest and fair assessment of something unless I watch it. If I don't watch it, I'm not going to give you my opinion on it. It isn't fair. It isn't right. Too many people do that, and it's just not how I operate. So I watched it. I gave it a fair shot. It's trash. End of story. There is no two ways to say about it. Good Times and the American Society of Magical Negroes are two properties that shouldn't have never been made by no stretch of the imagination. The fact that the estate of Norman Lear, because he has passed away, teamed with Seth MacFarlane and, of all people, Steph Curry. Yes, the basketball player, by the way. And then you add on the fact that the artists that are in these properties, David Allen Greer in the American Society of Magical Negroes, and inside of Good Times, you have Marseille Martin, and so many others like Yvette Nicole Brown and so many other black artists that we have championed over the last 5 to 6, almost a decade, for them to get their just due, for them to turn around and to join in the chorus of such a project that did nothing but embarrass black people and just squash us to the lowest common denominator of things said about us for far too long. There is no redeeming quality for either one. What should have been an attempt at parody and satire just degenerated into caricature and horrible tropes, one after another. The fact that Good Times basically went to the well of having a baby, right? Be a drug dealer inside of the Evans family. That should say everything if you've never seen it. I would tell you that the only score you can give this is a 0, but really, if I was to score this, I would give it 2 middle fingers, and I would hope someone with just a shred of self-respect would take every copy that they can possibly find, American Society of Magical Negroes and Good Times, and burn it. I wish I had the power of Ultron or maybe even Vision from the MCU. I would scour the net and I would destroy every trace of these and never let them ever again see the light of day. At some point, Hollywood is going to reap the whirlwind of doing such projects about black people as if there is no penalty for doing it. And I would hope that every single black artist that is involved with both of these projects, I would hope that they look at these, be very ashamed, and never do anything close to this again. I'll be right back. New A24 film Civil War is not exactly what you think it is. If you haven't seen it, you're probably assuming this is basically some wet dream from some Southerner who wants to see the old days, like the old Civil War, come back, but have a completely different ending. But it's not. More so, this new film is a eye on exactly what's going on right now in our country. The film itself has a very basic plot. There are four journalists. They're trying to make their way across the United States as these pockets of factions have sectioned off the United States into groups and are fighting for control of the country. They are doing so after the president has decided, I won't give up power and I'm going to take a third term, whether you like it or not. And then the country devolves into civil war and everybody splits off into their groups and begin fighting. So as they make their way across this no man's land, they're headed to Washington, D.C. to try to get an interview with him. Very basic plot. It's a plot that if you've seen any war movie that involves any type of journalist whatsoever, you've seen a lot of what's in this one. But what you haven't seen that we see in this movie is a very sharp eye by Alex Garland to explain the world in which we live in right now with a piece of speculative fiction. We all watched in horror the events of January 6th as many men and women took to the Capitol building, destroying and unfortunately killing a few people as they went. And we look at that and we say to ourselves, that could never possibly happen. But over the past few years, we've seen this divide between not just people, but between the government and its citizens. And these divides are just growing wider and wider by the minute, by the hour, by the day. And we keep telling ourselves, well, it'll never get that bad. It'll never get that far. But this film reminds us that all it takes is for one thing to happen for it to get as far as we think it can't go. This is a great film. It is thrilling. It is compelling. Kirsten Dunst and everybody involved actually acting is top notch. A24 has this ability to take even the smallest ideas of films and to breathe so much life and so much breath into them. And I truly appreciate it. Alex Garland did a fantastic job for a man to be British and not be an American citizen. He did a fantastic job of portraying the United States of what could happen if these events did in fact come to pass. I want you to take note and when you watch this film that what is going on in the film actually can happen. If you look at the news day in, day out, we see our own government doing things that we do not agree with. They're watching us, constantly surveilling us illegally and legally. They are taking power, taking tax money and telling us, well, you're just going to have to accept it. We're in charge and your opinion doesn't matter. They are doing things that can cause a civil war to happen. And that's the entire point of the film. It has nothing to do with the old days. There is almost no race injected into this. It is simply about the idea of what man can do to another man or woman when the divide between us grows much too far. A lot of people are going to review this movie and say, well, it's too much of a speculative fiction, but they're overlooking the events that are happening right now, right in front of us. We most of us anyway, remember the events that happened at Kent State when students were shot and killed as they protested the Vietnam War. For so long, so many Gen X and late era and early era millennials thought that could never happen again. We would never let that happen again. But right now, as we speak, and you can look on the news and find these articles and stories yourself. Right now, states are calling in National Guard troops to quell protests over what's happening in Gaza Strip between Israel and Palestine and to keep students. And they are violently moving students out of these protests. What happened at Kent State is very much on the verge of happening again. And if that does happen, then what do you think will follow? Angry parents taking to the streets to protest their own children being harmed. After that, then what? More National Guard. more deaths, more shootings, more heavy-handed tactics, more Gestapo tactics. Right here in the United States. We keep thinking that these things can't happen. But yet this film reminds us that it only takes one match to light a powder keg. And that is the point of Civil War. It's not about Kirsten Dunst and her crew taking off to have an interview with the president. It's not about the wacky idea that Texas would join California in a faction. This is speculative fiction, by the way. Don't forget that part. It is not about the United States devolving into a civil war where everybody is after everybody else and our country becomes this war-torn dystopian wasteland. It's not about that. Watching Civil War, what I see is a reminder of the things we have to watch out for so it does not happen. And I believe that one point is missed by so many people who have seen this film and so many people who have reviewed it. If you have not seen Civil War, I would demand you need to see it. It is a very compelling, very thrilling movie. And honestly, at this point, just like the last couple of years, I believe A24 has dropped the movie of the year. Don't know yet. Year's got a lot more time to go, so that could change. But for right now, Civil War is in the lead in my book. We'll be right back. One Civil War to another. Now, I was not going to even bring this topic up for today's program, but I was asked about it, so I put some thought into it. So here we go. What's going on in hip hop right now is something that I have not seen for, in truth, probably half my life. When I was younger, I saw the rise, the going ons, and the death of the East Coast, West Coast beef. It was fabulous to see, quite honestly. You had so much great music come out of it. Hip hop itself is born and bred within two MCs battling back and forth, lyricism taking the front seat over everything else. The artistry of writing a song and crafting it, especially when you're taking shots at your opponent. We haven't seen that in hip hop for quite a long time. So the fact that we are seeing it now, not just between two artists, but between two factions of artists, really is an amazing thing. J. Cole with Kendrick Lamar, and then you throw in Drake, and what happened with Chris Brown completely destroying Quavo, Rick Ross, and now you have Kanye West, and then so many other artists are now joining inside of this fight. To me, it is exactly what hip hop needed. It is truly what hip hop needed. For far too long, we've relied, the industry itself and the culture of hip hop has relied far too long on great producers making music for everybody to dance to and to feel through. And the lyrics have suffered. We haven't had enough lyricism. But now what we have, because this is basically a battle of wits and the pen and not the violence that has seemed to have dogged the industry for so long with our artists, it's exactly what they needed to do. And to me, it's showing a couple of things that we have talked about inside of hip hop for a long time. With Chris Brown absolutely just obliterating Quavo, that kind of proves exactly what people have said from Jump Street, that Migos couldn't rap. They couldn't craft a song to save their life. Mostly what everybody was banging and falling in love with them was just the music itself. It had nothing to do with the lyrics whatsoever, because their lyrics aren't really that great. And Chris Brown basically just proved that. A man who actually sings crafted a better 16 bars and absolutely destroyed his opponent. And Quavo should have had some answer to it and had none whatsoever. You have to. I just absolutely love to see it. The other thing that we have with this whole hip hop civil war is the apology from J. Cole to Kendrick Lamar, which basically took him out of the game, right? Most people jumped on his case and said that that was a weak thing to do, but I look at it in a different way. If J. Cole had took this the old way they used to do it for the last few, like a decade or so, and had taken it to violent means in the street to answer back to Kendrick Lamar, then we would have been sad that Kendrick Lamar or either or maybe J. Cole, one of them would have been hurt or killed, God forbid, in the entire fight. And then next thing you know, everybody would have went about their way. But it didn't. We kept it within the bounds of writing a song, answering your opponent, and you either bow out gracefully or just keep coming back until you win. That was the old school way of doing things. And we got so far away from it, and we've seen so many rappers killed because of it for one thing or another. But for J. Cole to step aside and say, well, I gave him my best shot, he got me, and that's pretty much the end of it. That's the old way of doing things. And I truly think that maybe hip hop is going back to that. And we truly do need that. We truly do need to keep beefs within the realm of just making songs about each other and calling it a day after that. So I am so happy that it's absolutely going on. And maybe perhaps, and this is just my own little personal thing I want out of all of this, maybe perhaps with this rap civil war going on in real life, maybe EA Sports will actually open its eyes and we can get another V for Vendetta. I mean, not V for Vendetta, but a Def Jam Vendetta type of game, right? Maybe we can get another game like that. Because who knows? What's going on right now may not only reset hip hop, maybe it can reset everything that circles this culture of music. It'd be a beautiful thing to see. Be right back. Hey, look back there. Gambit's back. Now, and on the cover of that comic is not only Gambit, but you have Psylocke, Colossus, and Rogue. And speaking of Rogue, this new episode, the latest episode of X-Men 97, is all about her. And it reminds me of that old saying, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, because with the death of Gambit coming in the episode before and the death of Magneto and it weighing heavy on Rogue, she is very much scorned and she is on the warpath. And this was all about her finding catharsis. And there is very little of it and very little healing. And she goes on one hell of a swath looking for Henry Gyrick and Bolivar Trask in order to exact some little measure of revenge, even though by the time this episode is over, she doesn't actually get it. But man, what a fantastic episode, full of Easter eggs. Just a good episode from beginning to end. I was told by my buddy Willie, who has been on the podcast a few times before I watched this episode, he said, hey, you need to get some popcorn, get something to drink, sit down, don't move. Just sit down and watch this episode. He said, don't be distracted. Keep your eyes on the screen. And I said, okay, I trust him. And sure enough, that's how good this episode was. Every little thing in this episode was an Easter egg. By my count, there were at least 80 to 85 Easter eggs from different comic books and different pop culture references and other things in the X-Men universe. It was just that good. I cannot tell you how good it was. Was it as good as episode 5? No, episode 5 is just up there. The emotional toll that episode took on all of us, it's in its own stratosphere. But it's a little bit better than episode 6. I would say even equal to episode 5. But it was just really good. If you didn't watch it, spoilers coming. So you'll know that I'm telling you what's up. You may want to back away. I'm going to count to 3, then we're going to get into it. 1, 2, 3. So the entire story starts out with Gambit's funeral. It's a beautiful service presided over by Nightcrawler, who is a very religious character. If you did not know that, well, now you know. It was such a beautiful ceremony. Everybody but Rogue obviously attended. And while the funeral is going on, Rogue actually takes off to start looking for Henry Gyrick and Bolivar Trask. She first assaults a base out in the southwest of the United States, and she winds up meeting Thaddeus Ross. Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross, and he gives up a place where Henry Gyrick could be. So she goes to search for it, winds up being this old abandoned a little hut out in the middle of some mountain range in the snow, and she meets Captain America. So that Captain America cameo we were expecting, here it is, which means that one of these last 3 episodes we should be getting that Spider-Man appearance that they have so far teased. If we don't get it, we don't, but I got a feeling we're going to get it in one of these episodes. She meets up with Cap. Cap tells her, hey, I know what you're going through, but I can't help you. You're going to have to go at it alone. So she takes off into getting more information. She takes off into New Mexico, or Mexico City. I'm sorry, Mexico City, Mexico. And there she finds Henry Gyrick in order to lead her to Bolivar Trask. And in the middle of all of that, we get clips of the cleanup going on in Genosha, and it is just such a scene. A lot of the imagery that goes on in this episode is very much reminiscent of not only the 9/11 attacks, but also what happened at the Pulse nightclub in Florida that was shot up. Even that was even confirmed by director Bo DeMeo, who over the past couple of weeks, ever since the ending of episode 5, he's actually been very active on Twitter. And I have a very deep, detailed theory about what's going on, not within the series, but with him and this. We'll get to that later. When they finally figure out exactly where Bolivar Trask is, they go to, of all places, Madripoor. So they get down to Madripoor, which that's a couple of the Easter eggs we're going to tackle in a minute. When they get down to Madripoor, they investigate over at Horizon Labs. Horizon Labs is another Easter egg. We'll get to that. And they meet up with Trask, who has turned himself, well, not so much turned himself, and I'll tell you who actually did it to him, turned himself into a human sentinel called the Prime Sentinel. They have to do a fight with him, and he actually beats the dog shit out of them. He wipes the floor with them, and he's only actually brought down by an EMP grenade thrown by Cable. Cable shows up at the end of the episode, and after that, we finally get to figure out who the big bad is, and I was completely correct. I was completely correct about 2 things. Number 1, we get to meet the big bad, and it is indeed Bastion. They have been showing clues to him all throughout the series, not just over the past few weeks. And now we get to figure out also that Bastion has Magneto. Magneto is not dead somehow or another. We haven't figured out how he lived, but we'll figure that out more likely going through the last 3 episodes. This was a good episode. A lot of what I said indeed was going to happen has indeed happened. I said Magneto was going to be alive. I said Bastion was going to be the enemy. I was surprised that they are mashing 2 different stories together, because this is not all from one comic book. This is actually from 2 different comic book storylines, and they're kind of mashing them together. A lot of what happened in one did indeed happen in the other. But to put them together in the way that Bo DeMeo and his crew have done, it's just fantastic. But if you've seen the episode, or if you haven't seen the episode, that ain't why you're here. You're here to talk about all the Easter eggs, and there were a lot. Like I said, there were anywhere between 80 to 85 little Easter eggs from comic books and pop culture from the 90s, because Bo DeMeo and them have been doing that. There are 90s Easter eggs from things that were going on right around the same time that the original series was on, that they use and they kind of thrown into here. One of them we're actually going to get into today, it's kind of funny. If you're a fan of Pokemon, you saw it. If not, I'll get to it in a second. So the first Easter egg we want to talk about is the fact that Gambit's funeral is being held in New Orleans. Now, we all know that Gambit's nickname is the Cajun, right? He's from New Orleans. That's where they took him home. And you could tell it's New Orleans, because even though they lowered his into the grave, I think they just did that for a dramatic effect for the people watching it. But we know for a fact that this is New Orleans, because all of the graves are above ground, which they have to do in New Orleans because the city itself sits below sea level. So you don't want that water that's below the ground pushing the graves up and out of their burial places. A lot of the faces at Gambit's funeral are more Easter eggs. We see Bobby LeBeau, who is Gambit's brother. We see Belladonna Boudreaux, who is Gambit's ex-fiance. And we see Pierre. Pierre was one of the thieves in the Thieves Guild. And we saw all 3 of them in season 2, episode 6 from the original series. It was absolutely a thing to see all three of them again all at one point. I kept trying to think of their faces. I appreciate friends of mine who saw the episode, and I got to talk to them about it before I talked to you about it, and they reminded me of who all these faces were. But yeah, it's good to see them from the original series in this, and that's been going back and forth using people from the original series in this pickup series. There's a woman also in the cemetery at the funeral. She has white hair. That is Aurora from Alpha Flight. Now she does not connect to Gambit. She connects to Wolverine. But if you look at Wolverine during the funeral when she's actually standing amongst them, he's doing his best not to look at her. So I think they kind of just threw her in there for dramatic effect. They would have been friends, her and Gambit, but she more connects with Wolverine than anything else. And Gambit and Wolverine's face during the entire time, which they actually had a kind of a thing going on. But so yeah, Wolverine's face, he's doing his very best to pay attention to Kurt Nightcrawler while he's delivering the eulogy, but at the same time try not to look at her. I thought that was kind of funny. Nice little dig up in there on Wolverine during all this thing. So we catch up with Rogue, and she's flying, like I said, through the southwest of the United States, headed to that base to try to pick up clues for Kurt Heinrich and Bolivar Trask, where she fly past Joshua trees. That's how we know it's the Southwest, because that's the only place that these trees are that they grow in the United States. They grow out in the Southwest of the U.S. The fort itself is called Fort Ballard. Now that is named after one of the writers for this particular episode, J.B. Ballard. I thought that was pretty cool too. While she's fighting the soldiers outside and fighting these giant robots, trying to find a way into this heavily defended and heavily guarded base, one of the guys keeps shooting her, and he screams, "Oh, what are we supposed to do, man?" Well, I think that's kind of a throwback to Aliens, the second one, where where one of the lieutenants says, "It's game over, man. We're done." And if you've seen the Alien movie, you know exactly what I'm talking about. When she's actually fighting one of the robots, she does this flip in the air and this hard downward kick, and they freeze on her as she does this kick. That is the exact same kick that we've seen Rogue do in two different video games, X-Men versus Street Fighter and Marvel versus Capcom 2. If you played either video game, you've done that kick 1,000 times. It is a destructive kick, and it has saved my butt playing those video games a few thousand times. And I love the fact that they threw that in there. That's what I was saying about pop culture. They've used a lot of things like that in this series. They haven't just used things from the comic books, things that are connected with X-Men or things from the 90s around the time the original series was on. They threw that in. This is from a video game, just like we had video game references in Motendo back in episode 4. So it's awesome. I appreciate them for doing that. Inside the base, the man in charge is indeed General Thaddeus Ross. The voice is being done by Michael Patrick Gill. Now, if you listen to how he's actually doing the voice, he's doing a very good job of emulating the voice of the late William Hurt, who passed away not too long ago. And William Hurt is the man who played General Ross going back to 2008 Incredible Hulk, and he has been General Ross all through the MCU. Going forward, Harrison Ford will be playing General Thunderbolt Ross as he becomes president in Captain America: Brave New World. So I can't wait for that film to come out. The structure, in order to break into the base, Rogue has to. She doesn't actually go through the walls. She uses this circular object to smash down through the ground, through and into the base to confront Thaddeus Ross. If you look at it, that is the same sail that they held Loki in the first Avengers movie, the one that was built for the Hulk. Even Thunderbolt Ross says, "Hey, we don't have to worry about her getting in because this place was made specifically to keep the Hulk imprisoned." But I guess she figured it out. I'll just take this and smash it through. It also looks kind of like the sail that Emil Blonsky was in the She-Hulk series. So either one of those, she uses it to smash through the base. That's a really good Easter egg to stick in here. When Scott is talking to President Kelly in the hologram about not too long after that scene, he mentions that Val Cooper is still missing after the attack. So that's why he brings it up in order to get the president to send him more help, but the president doesn't want to. This could mean that Val is actually part of the attack, which I have theorized for a few episodes now, that she is not actually who she thinks she is, who she says she is. I think that's not Val Cooper. I don't think that's the real Val Cooper. I think this is Mystique. Seriously, I really think this is Mystique. I have nothing else to go on but a gut feeling. So if it's not her, it's not her. But I got a feeling I'm right. I've been right about a lot of things so far. I think I'm right about this. We get to see Barbarous and the Blob in the opening visit when they go back to Genosha for the cleanup. Barbarous is seen in the Savage Land in the original series, and we see Blob all throughout the original series in different places. I mean, we've even seen Blob in the live action Wolverine movie. Which one was that? That was Wolverine Origins, which is such a horrible movie. We don't want to talk about it. We'll leave that one alone. The destruction is definitely meant, like I said before, to invoke the days directly after the 9/11 attacks. And Bo DeMayo has stated specifically on Twitter over the past few days that his vision for the series was to invoke everything that millennials would have seen and endured during our times through the 90s with this series and everything after it leading up to this series. So the 9/11 attack, the attack on the Post Club down in Orlando, Florida, and so many other things. It's meant to show the world that, hey, this is what millennials would have gone through, right? And it's also a reminder that everything that goes on in X-Men, in the comics and in the series, it is meant to mimic social change and social strife out in the real world for minorities. It has always been that way, even when people think that, oh, well, that's not what Jim Lee wanted. Jim Lee wanted it for the comics, but actually he did. He knew right up front that that's where he wanted to go. He just didn't know how to do it. That's why he turned the reins over to people like Chris Claremont, who was actually my favorite writer and an artist for X-Men during the X-Men run, the comics in the early days. We actually hear Beast quote, "Look for the helpers. You will always find people who are helping." Now when Beast is saying this comes from Mr. Rogers. This is actually a direct quote from Mr. Rogers, his book, Mr. Rogers Talks to Parents, and it got quoted in the Boston. That exact same quote was used in the Boston Globe article right after 9/11, when it was one of the things that parents were supposed to tell their kids when they were trying to explain what happened during the 9/11 attacks. Quoting Mr. Rogers in X-Men, who knew? That's not something I would have seen coming, but hey, there it is. The doctor, when that Beast is talking to, that is Amelia Vaught. She has the mutant ability to turn herself and things into mist in order to move them and to move herself around, which makes her a pretty good spy, but she's a doctor. And she actually appeared in a few episodes in the original series back in the day. When we get back to Rogue, she lands in front of that snowy cabin. Out front of the cabin is a World War II era motorcycle. Obviously, it belongs to Captain America. The license plate on that motorcycle is AVN A10. This is referring to Avengers Annual number 10. That's the first appearance of Rogue in Marvel Comics. So if you ever get a chance to pick that one up, you might want to keep it. It could be worth some money one day. The motorcycle, obviously, like I said, it belongs to Captain America. He throws his shield down to Rogue, and when it's flying through the air, that same hum that we have heard throughout the MCU whenever Cap throws the shield, I was so glad that they used it. That's one of those little things that Bo DeMayo has done. He's taken a lot of the things from the movies and made sure to incorporate it into this to make it, to let you know that we are very much mired in the MCU too. Even though it's animated, we are still MCU bound. The sound, like I said, that sound, and the guy who's doing the voice for Cap in this one, his name is Josh Keaton. He actually voices the Steve Rogers in the What If series, and he was the Mystery Spider. I forgot the character's actual name in Invincible over on Amazon Prime. So hey, Josh Keaton's getting around doing some work. He's a really good voice actor. If you've actually never seen him do anything else, he just look him up. He does a lot of voices for a lot of characters that you probably don't know that you like. Inside the cabin is a secret basement that Cap accesses by tuning a radio to a specific frequency. Now, the design of the cabin in that secret basement, it is exactly the same, or it feels almost exactly the same as the way Camp Lehigh was set up in Captain America, the Winter Soldier, when Steve and Natasha went to investigate and they wound up meeting the AI for Arnim Zola. I thought that was really good. I kept looking at it when I first watched this episode, and I was like, why does this place look familiar? And then I remembered. I was like, oh yeah, this is where they met Arnim Zola. The OZT we see on the screens dotted about in that basement, that stands for Operation Zero Tolerance. It's an anti-mutant anti-mutant organization led by Bastion in the comics. So they're in 1997 comics, I should say. That is another lead up to Bastion, which we now know is our big bad, our overall arcing villain for the series. I called that one. I said it. I said Bastion is being pointed at in a lot of different places, and here it is right here. Outside of seeing him at the end, this was another cameo for him popping up when Cap refuses to go after Gyrick and Trask with Rogue. She takes her shield and she flings it off into the distance at some mountains behind this cabin. Now, when it does and it gets off out of our sight, it's this little star that pops up, right? Well, that is the exact same star that we get in Pokemon whenever Team Rocket loses a battle and they get zapped and they go flying off in the air and they say we're blasting off again, and you get that little ting. Well, that's the exact same star that we got from Pokemon. That's the exact same star we got when she threw his shield off Nerd. I told you, if you watch Pokemon, you saw that you were going to get it. That's kind of funny. It's one of those things that you don't really consider to link to X-Men or anything else. It's such a Pokemon thing, but for Bo DeMeo to reach back and to bring something like that from there into this and use it as an Easter egg, the man knows what he's doing. I swear. But there's a reason why I'm bringing all those little things up, because there's something I think going on. Like I said, I'm going to get to it real soon. Back in Genosha, Beast utters the quote, "Riots are the language of the unheard," to the reporter that has come to cover the aftermath. Now, this quote is directly from Martin Luther King. And he said that, and just as MLK was, Beast was rebuffed by the reporter. And then Beast tells her, well, maybe mutants shouldn't have to beg for their tolerance. That is such a beautiful line by Beast. And when he said it, I sat up in my seat and I said, yeah, exactly right. And like I said before, this is showing you that everything that goes on within the X-Men universe is very much mired in what goes on in society right outside the window, which is what Marvel is supposed to be anyway. But X-Men is supposed to be mired in what is actually going on with social change and social strife, right? Mutants are meant to be how the world sees Black people and other minorities, even if you don't want to believe that is exactly what goes on in the X-Men comics. This is not woke. This is telling stories and trying to get people to understand what is actually happening right outside their window. And actually, when you think about that strife between Beast and that reporter, this is playing right into Bastion's hand, because in the comic books, what Bastion wanted, and in this story, what Bastion is trying to do is to get so much strife between the mutants and humans that a war breaks out, and then he can swoop in and say, hey, I have sentinels to stop the mutant problem, and I'm going to give them to you. And then he gets government backing in order to keep building these things in order to wipe mutants out, which is his thing. Because remember, he is built from the Nimrod from the future and the Master Mode. He doesn't like mutants. He's trying to get rid of them. It's built into who he is, being a half Nimrod and half Master Mode. Rogue finally finds Henry Gyrick in Mexico City, like I said, and he's listening to an opera while he's examining a collection of butterflies and beetles. That song he's listening to is fittingly from the Puccini opera Madame Butterfly. The title of that song is Un bel di vedremo. Now, the translation to that is One Good Day We Will See. And that is a very ominous title. I promise you that. And one good day is coming, and we will see exactly what happens. In Genosha, Emma Frost is actually rescued from the rubble. She survives thanks to her diamond form, which we never actually get to see her diamond form in the original series. But it does pop up after the Genosha attack and during the Genosha attack in the original comic books that this story that they're building is taken from. So very good for them for actually sticking that in there. That's not something that most people actually know. You never actually get to see Emma Frost use her diamond form in the original animated series. We didn't actually get to see it on screen until we got to see Emma Frost in First Class. There's a piece of trivia for you that you can bring up with your friends. You can take some money off of them. Right. So after she finds him, after she finds Trask in Mexico City, he said he's not going to give her any information. But Rogue has her way. She actually takes her gloves off and grabs him by the neck. She doesn't strangle him, but she does in fact get starts to drain Gyrix's life force, and she gets a lot of information thrown at her. And we actually get a flash of Bastion in all the things she starts to see. That again, this is after she gets all the information out of him. She winds up waking up in an alley. It seems like there was a scene that was cut out after that, and it was confirmed that there was a scene of her basically being overwhelmed by the energy and the visions that she sees, and she stumbles out of the house and she winds up passing out in this alley and blacking out, and she doesn't wake up until after what we see in the series. In this episode, Kurt and the rest of the X-Men do find her in this alley, and it's going on, and we see all these decorations for what is the celebration of Los Dias de Muertos, which happens in October, which kind of fits because earlier in the episode, President Kelly is saying, hey, I have to worry about what people are saying, and I have to look at the polls, which means that there's an election coming up. And he himself says, hey, I'm trying to keep somebody else who's worse, who you think I'm bad and you think I'm doing you wrong. I am trying to keep somebody else that is way worse than me out of the White House. And that other person could be Grayton Creed, who would become president. And he doesn't like mutants at all, so whatsoever. So so the timeline actually fits, which is perfect. Like I said, little things like that, a lot of people don't get right. When you do things correctly, timelines match up like that, that means you're paying attention to what you're trying to do. When she comes to, like I said, the rest of the X-Men find her. All the information that she gets, it takes them to Madripoor, and I just couldn't believe that they actually did it. I'd never believed that they were actually going to use Madripoor in anything other than Falcon and the Winter Soldier, or maybe even in some other iteration of anything with that has to do with Wolverine, right? But here we actually get to see them actually head to Madripoor in order to find Bolivar Trask. Now, the last time we seen or heard anything of Madripoor was in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. It is a place actually where Wolverine, under his codename Patch, would hang out in secret. In the comic books, there was a run called Wolverine Patch, where he hung out in Madripoor in order to take down bad guys. Also, in that run of the series, he hung out with Bruce Banner, the Great Hulk, who went under the code name Joe Fixit. And we should be seeing some sort of cameo or some sort of link to that, because we've seen in the first trailer for Deadpool and the Deadpool Wolverine movie that we have Wolverine with that familiar hairdo with the white tuxedo that he wears in the comics. We see him sitting. We see his back. And he's facing into the table playing some sort of card game, which is more likely he's playing blackjack. But we see that in the first trailer, so they are obviously going to use that for some, maybe even just a flashback. They're going to use that somewhere in Deadpool Wolverine, which I can't wait to see that. Now, floating around Madripoor are all of these billboards. It looks very much like Times Square in New York, very neon, very lit up. Even though Madripoor is supposed to be basically an urban city that's a little bit poor, right? But it looks really good. There's a lot of neons, but a lot of these billboards are also cameos and callbacks unto themselves. So we see one for Vista Corp, which is where Scott Lang actually used to work. We see another one for Yoshida Corp, which is run by Shinjin Yoshida, who is AKA the Silver Samurai, who we've seen in one of the Wolverine movies. We actually see a billboard with a space shuttle that looks something like the Space Shuttle Columbia, which is a tie-in to the same Phoenix storyline from the original series. Now, when the X-Men arrive, they arrive at Horizon Labs, which is the company that produces the Spider armor in this Amazing Spider-Man comics. Inside the Horizon building, on either side of it, there's Roxxon on one side and Hammer Industries on the other. Roxxon is the MCU. It's just a energy company conglomerate that was created for the MCU. We've actually seen name, the name Roxanne, it was on one of those cars that crashed in Iron Man 2 when Tony was at the race in Italy. It was the green and white car. You go back and look, it's there. Trust me, these are things I like to remember. And Hammer Industries, of course, is run by Justin Hammer. We've seen him on and off in a couple of movies dealing with Iron Man. When Morph presses the vending machine button, he gets a diet ping in order to activate the little secret door to get over to Bolivar Trask's hidden lab. It's a Diet Pingo, which is a soft drink. Now, this is the same soft drink company that Bruce Banner worked at when he was hiding out in Mexico in 2008's Incredible Hulk. There are a lot of Incredible Hulk references, so they're working up to something with Incredible Hulk. They have to be, because if they are not, there's going to be a lot of pissed off people. I just know it is. These humanoid sentinels that they see around Horizon Labs inside of Trask hidden lab, these are Prime Sentinels. Now, Prime Sentinels are humans that have been implanted with cybernetic nanotech enhancements, and they don't know that they are Prime Sentinels. It just takes one little trigger, almost like Execute Order 66, and then they snap to and they go right to attacking and doing what they were supposed to do. So Morph actually calls Trask the poor man's Oppenheimer, and Trask actually repeats the same line that the real Oppenheimer spoke in the movie that just came out and in real life from the Gita. Behold, I am become death. We all know what that's from. We heard that 1,000 times, right? Over our lives. Trask and Oppenheimer actually do mirror one another. They both created these things that they thought were supposed to help mankind, but they wind up just being ultimate tools of destruction, and they both live to regret it. Live to regret their own inventions. This was just a really good episode. Not as emotionally taxing as 5, but a lot of action, tons of Easter eggs. I am just thoroughly excited for the last 3 episodes. I cannot wait until they drop. Yeah, we got 3 more episodes, and it's actually a 3-part series. It is all going to come down to these last 3 episodes to see how this series finally lands, and I cannot wait for them. The next one is obviously next Wednesday, and when it comes out, we'll be talking about it again next Saturday. I just can't wait. Honestly, I'm just excited. This series is just so good. Again, Bo DeMeo should be commended for everything that him and his crew has done. Now, something about Bo DeMeo that I think is going on in the background. Bo DeMeo and Disney have both said that he didn't quit and he wasn't fired, right? What if they didn't actually remove him from the company? What if they're actually moving him out of the way so somebody else can take over the series? Because remember, season 2 is already done. So here's the theory that I have. They didn't fire him. He didn't quit. They moved him out of the way so somebody can take over starting with the 3rd season after season 2 is over. So Bo DeMeo can concentrate on doing another X-Men live action movie for MCU. And I think that that's what's going on. Nobody has said anything about why he was fired or why he was let go and why he stopped working on the X-Men series going forward right before this thing started. And there hasn't been any bad blood. There hasn't been any publicity about it, about why he left. There hasn't been anything about something being wrong, about him being hard to work with. Nothing. Hasn't been anything said about it. The only thing they said was it was mutual that he stopped working on the series. That was it. So this is my theory. I think they just shuffled him out of the door. They said, hey, we don't want you working on this. We'll let somebody take over for 3. Lay the groundwork and we'll follow in your footsteps. But we need you working on the live action film. You obviously have your finger on it. You know what you're doing. Take over, give us a live action film, but you need time away from this in order to get it done. Go work on that. Leave this alone. What if that's the case? And I think that is the case. And if that is true, if what I'm thinking is true, we are in for one hell of a great X-Men movie. We are probably going to get the X-Men movie we have all been wanting ever since X-Men United came out. And we all know how bad that film was. But that's just a theory. You let me know in the comments. We're going to step to the side, and when we come back, it'll be time for the last call. So that's it, and that's all. I want to thank each and every single one of you all for tuning into this Pokey Little podcast. You could be doing anything with your Saturday, but you decided to tune in and listen to me prattle on, and I truly, truly appreciate every single one of you to do it. I say it every week. I don't care if it's 1, 5, 10, 100, or 1,000 of you. I truly appreciate every single person that tunes in to this little podcast of mine. Hey, before we go, let's tune into our weekend watch list. It's actually really good this week. So for our film pick and our nostalgia pick, it's one and the same. Scarface. Now, like I talked about in the top of the news, they are coming out with a remake of the original movie, which I still say not really a thing that they really need to do, but hey, if they're going to do it, they're going to do it. I can't believe they're considering Pedro Pascal, but hey, if that's the way they want to go, that's them. But I'm going to watch the original this week. For our animation pick, Kaiju number 8. Now, this is a newer anime. It started a few weeks ago. I'm going to catch up with it. I haven't even started it yet, but from what I'm hearing, really good anime, so I can't wait to dig into this one. And for our series pick, The Hollow Crown. Now, it's only 7 what we would call episodes. This is BBC, so they kind of do things a whole hell of a lot different than us Americans. So it's only 7 what we call episodes, 2 seasons, but every episode is like 2 hours or more longer. So it's going to be a grind to watch all of them. But it's Tom Hiddleston back in what started in 2013 and ended in 2016. Oddly enough, it was a long time between those episodes, but I'm going to watch it. I love history stuff, and so this is going to be right up my alley. So it's time for us to go. I want you to get out there, have a good weekend. I don't care if it's raining. Enjoy everything. Enjoy the rest of the NFL draft if you're watching it. Enjoy just hanging out with your friends and your family. Take care of them. Take care of yourself. Don't do anything to hurt yourself. And always remember, if you're feeling lonely, if you're feeling like you need somebody to talk to, like the walls are closing in, or you pick up the phone, dial or text 988. There's always somebody there to help you through the darker times. Don't do anything to hurt yourself, please. The world needs you. I need you. So it's time for us to go, and we shall end this episode the way we end every single episode. God bless. I love you, and peace. See you next time.